there was another band in the area at the time called Out to Lunch, and they were having similar sort of success. We were kind of all on the same level. You know, we were two sort of popular bands in that area, and they're a great band. A good singer, Jason, a guy called Jason Gregory. He was the front man, he was the singer, great front man, great singer, and a guy called Simon on guitar, great guitarist. And us Beats Working guys would go and watch Out to Lunch gigs, and found out years later that, you know, that Out to Lunch guys would sometimes come and watch Beats Working gigs.
There was a guy called Andy Finlay that we knew quite well, bass player from Windsor, really nice chap, and he was playing in a band called Beats Working, and we kind of, Jason and I used to go down and sort of see a few of their gigs actually, and I remembered, funny enough, seeing them in the Wheatchief pub in Old Windsor.
We didn't really know each other, but we sort of knew of each other, and we would nod and acknowledge each other from a, you know, respectful distance. There was kind of a mutual respect thing going on, I suppose.
And then, funny enough, they kind of came to see us a couple of times when it was Out to Lunch, and I think they might have even been at the Excess gig where I had this mad pink hair. So we kind of knew each other. We talked to each other and, you know, bumped into each other in pubs and stuff, but we never really kind of did anything other than that.
The band called Beats Working, and he'd just done this album. Yeah, I've still got the vinyl upstairs. Well, I've got vinyl of everything actually. God, what was that called?
Life on a Wire.
Life on a Wire, yeah, not Putting It About, that's the other one, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, Life on a Wire, I remember getting hold of that and thinking, God, this is how the real boys do it. This is like real big time. So we'd been going to see him anyway, and I was surprised that, wow, they got a record out. This is really good. So we got a bit more involved with going to see Andy, and obviously that's when we hooked up with Chris.
But the thing that actually I remembered about seeing Beats Working was not just Andy, the bass player, but the drummer. And I was just watching him all night. He was playing an electric kit, part electric, part acoustic kit, and the tunes were quite poppy with a bit of a rock edge, but there was just something really kind of special, really kind of delineating the band, and it was the drums, it was the rhythm section. And I just thought, "Christ, this guy's really good." And actually, I was looking at him going, "He's actually quite a good-looking chap as well." I was like quite infuriating because I wasn't particularly, you know, vain or anything about my own ability to look fine, but I thought, this guy's he's got nice curly hair and everything, he's slamming the drums behind Beats Working. It was brilliant.
And then Andy Finlay, who was a bass player in Beats Working, he said to me one day, "Did you fancy coming out for a drink with the boys from Out to Lunch?"
Me and Simon had a sat down chat, and at the time, Chris wanted to do something different. He'd been doing the Beats Working thing for a time, and I felt that he wanted to do something more rocky and original.
You know, I just wanted to play an Iron Maiden, you know.
Let's get together and have a beer. So actually we met down the Arts Centre, which at the time was the kind of the venue of choice in the area.
We all met up in Windsor Arts Centre, which was a place that a lot of us used to play. You know, it was a venue and there was a bar upstairs, and we all met up in there.
But we met down there and we kind of just all really got on, really. We all had the same musical inspirations.
We just hit it off, you know. We were all like-minded individuals, shall we say.
And we all just wanted to get together to play music, and I think something kind of brewed that night. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was just the love of music and the love of wanting to do something.
So I said, well, if you fancy that, if Andy's up for it, let's go into the, you know, rehearsal room and bang a few numbers out. Simon and I have got some tracks that we would like to put down, stuff that we've written but really didn't suit Out to Lunch.
So we say, well, let's go in a rehearsal studio, and the four of us, and see what happens. You know, let's make some songs. And we had a list of songs that we all wanted to play, and we'll go and learn them and play them.
We just felt that we wanted to get out because there was much harder edge happening at that time. It was all very sort of pouty studs, leather, and bare-chested.
Codpiece.
Yeah, that sort of. No, it was sort of big hair, bare-chested metal sort of thing.
You know, White Snake stuff at the time was Here I Go Again, all that sort of thing. Some tracks that we'd written ourselves.
Yeah, so that's what we decided to do. So we went in, and it was very poppy. I think the transition to heavy rock is difficult when we come from a background of that sort of thing. So it took us a while to find our feet of knowing exactly what we wanted to do.
So we called the band Paris. We went out, we did some gigs, and it got a good reaction.
I remember the first gig we did as Paris, that was the name that we called ourselves, was at Windsor Arts Centre, and it was down in the basement, and that's supposed to take 100 people. And for some unknown reason, on the day of the gig, we heard rumours out that people wanted to come, and they'd sold all the tickets in advance.
There's like 2 people out of one really locally popular band, and another one. When you put that together, it almost became a local supergroup, and it was the hype that was around it. The expectation was pretty great, and I remember that the promotion that we had, mainly off our own back, but everyone was behind us.
Apparently there were even ticket touts outside flogging tickets because the need to hear this band, Paris, which is the combination of all 4 of us, was so interesting to the local public that they were kind of queuing outside to come and see it.
And we're thinking, you know, our first decent headline slot should be good. Well, I hope we've done enough. And boy, have we done enough. I mean, the queue was down the street. There was people who had actually bought 10 tickets because there was only a limited amount they could get in there. It's a small place, really.
And I couldn't get my head around it at the time. I just felt very kind of impassioned by it.
And in the end, I think a lot of people, after the first set of being in the bar, the people who couldn't get in, walked in anyway.
And we had a great gig and, you know, did the sort of music that we really wanted to do.
And I just remember the second set we did was absolutely rammed. I mean, I couldn't breathe in there.
And from then on, it kind of just set a precedence, I think, for building on a great musical collaboration of the sort of 3 or 4 of us.
I remember in the early days playing in it, I was, you know, sit at the back watching the band, watch the audience, and I was thinking, yeah, you know, do you know what? This is a real band, you know? Because, you know, Jason as a front man,
I'd never really played in a band that had a dedicated singer.
Front man, entertainer, showman. You know, all the other bands, the guitarists sing, or, you know, you're all musicians bands, what I'd like to call them. But this was like kind of a showy band, you know?
Yeah, because there wasn't anything like that. There was a big music scene, and you know, there was sort of Mexico 70 going on, and oddly enough, there was a sort of rivalry with all those other bands. It was really, really strange that who was going to make it and who wasn't really. But it was pretty.
And we started to look like a band. We were in our early 20s, the hair was getting longer, you know, we started to look like a band, you know. And with Jason's energy up the front there, it was more of a show. Yeah, you came to listen to us, but you also came to watch it. And that was kind of my first, you know, experience, that education, I should say, it's actually putting on a show, you know.
That was pretty good. I mean, we had a series of very good gigs after that before we actually went into the studio.
Did some great gigs up in London. We got booked on a little mini tour.
And it just develops, and we got more and more popular, and more people would come to see us. And so we started doing our own stuff. Now, Jason and Simon, they're like the Lennon and McCartney of the band, or in Paris's case, they're the John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora. They're the writers. So me and Andy were never writers. We'd contribute to the writing in as far as, you know, structuring and of songs and that goes. But those two are the writers, and they're always very keen to write.
But yeah, getting a lot of interest, and I think that from the local interest and the promotions we were doing, that's why it then went to we get write-ups in national magazines, you know.
we were getting lots of recognition in the press and in the music press. When it got to a stage, at one point, you know, it wasn't a week go by where we weren't in the paper. They was writing something about us, and we were winning like little awards. You know, like best new band, best vocalist, best frontman, little things like that. You know, we were really, you know, it was really sort of chugging along.
You know, everyone's sort of banging on about the live shows and everything, and saying, you know, you must go and see these guys. And then people ask us, well, yeah, we can't come and see every band. We want something recorded. We want something on, you know, on tape.
So it was me, Chris, Andy and Jason had rehearsed all these songs with keyboards, and we didn't have any keyboards, and we didn't know anyone else who could do the keyboards. So we kind of were forced to go into the studio. It was over in somewhere over near Beaconsfield, I think. And we went in and we just went, you know what, we just got to give this everything we can. And
so that's when we went into the studio, and we had a couple of songs that we've been working on, and two that we're totally well gigged, and they were spot on.
So we went into our first recording session, went into a studio, and we made what you call it, I suppose you call it an EP, a 4 or 5 track recording. It wasn't an album.
so I spent a lot of time doing some guitar overdubs and trying to fill out the space that the keyboards would have filled. And actually the end result was quite, I think we were all quite really over the moon with it, because to not have keyboards there suddenly made a massive difference. But actually what we actually produced, and I still listen to it to this day, was quite incredible.
Because that's how you promoted yourself in those days. So you didn't have Facebook and websites. The internet didn't really exist. Well, it didn't exist at all. So what you had to do to get gigs, you had to have a recording of your band. You had a biog of the band telling all about the band and all your experience, and you had a set of photographs of the band, and that went out in a pack, and you take that around all the clubs and venues that you wanted to play and say, here's our band, any chance that you can book us, and that's how you get gigs. So that was the initial idea of doing the EP, to try and get bigger and better gigs further afield.
I'd been writing all the time, and that's when Under the Streetlight came about. I was down in Bristol and I was standing at the top of the Christmas steps, and it's like all misty, and there's this street lamp on the Christmas steps, and it's really hazy, and there's a girl standing underneath it, and I was thinking, God, she's rather gorgeous. Then, being very young and naive, it suddenly dawned on me, she's there for a reason. And I just felt a real loneliness for her, and like I would. And that's how Under the Streetlight happened. It's kind of like a story about an affair, which, a bloke falls in love with a woman of the night, and he's in love and she ain't. She's just doing her thing, really. So it's a very boring, very rock and roll thing to write about, really.
Walk through the street light, I see your eyes. Walk through the street light, I see through your eyes. Hiding in the back street, I see your face. Hiding in the back street, baby, you I can't replace. I only wish that you smile. Raise what's been done and said. And then take away all the lies that you had. You were just fooling me, never playing.
And we went in, we laid it all off in a day. Jason did all his vocals the next morning, and we mixed it the next afternoon. And that was the sort of classic band thing that people did. You went in and did it in 2 days.
And for me, I found it, a little bit daunting, because up to this point I felt I was a singer hanging out with musicians. So this was the first time I could actually have a real input apart from the live shows, which obviously I loved, and that was what it was all about for me, really.
And it was all analogue tape, 16 track tape then. But I had a field day, because it was like, right, give me 5 guitar tracks, I'm going to lay as many down as I possibly can. Jason did all his vocals, he did all his backups. Everything sounded great.
So I'm keen to get my bit done, but as always the case, you know, it's the singer does their bit at the end, and you go in and you do a session on a weekend. So by the time you get round doing your bit, because everything else has taken so long, you got the rest of the band who have been refining their everything and just saying, well, come on then, get it sorted. What do you know, that'll be all right. You don't need to do that again. Well, I wasn't happy with that.
When you record in a studio, it's completely different to playing live. You don't just all go in there, set up, play live and walk out with the tape. It was a multi-track recording studio, so you do it in sections. So you put the drums and the bass down first, and then Simon would listen to that back, so he'd listen to drums and bass back and put the guitar over that, and then you'd end up with a tape with it's got drums, bass and guitar on, all the music. And then Jason would listen to that back and put the vocals on. So what you see on the tape, by the time we started videoing, we're all done. Drums are done, bass is done, guitars are all done. Just Jason was left to do his vocals. So we're in the control room starting to get pissed.
The one thing I will say about recording in a studio is once you've done your part, what the fuck do you do next? You get out the log.
But you're also tired, it's a Sunday night, and suddenly you're at 11 o'clock and you've still got like 2 numbers to do. They say, oh well, we'll have to come back and do the backing vocals. And it's like a lot of pressure on you, really.
You're powdering your nose to go nowhere.
I don't know what it is about me, cameras and lager, but things just kind of come to a bit of a head and I just go off the tangent a little bit.
It gets to a stage where Simon is doing ballet dancing with an inflatable guitar in the middle of the control room. Poor old Jason is the other side of the window trying to lay this vocal track down.
So now you want to know why.
I don't know what came over me, but I just thought, you know, I've always really loved ballet, and I just started doing some ballet poses and, you know, like going through the motions and
the poor sound engineer, you know, he must have thought, what fucking wankers, we should stop pissing about. I mean, this is costing money.
the sound engineer is sitting there like that. What on earth is going on here? And Chris just laughing. But we were pissed, basically, and that's what we did.
We were young, we were excited.
But it was a fun time. It was probably my most enjoyable studio experience because of the pressures that you have. Because you haven't got a big budget and you've got an allotted time, you tend to overrun, and then you're under pressure to get your bit done. And if you're not feeling on top of the world on a Sunday night after sitting in a stuffy studio for 48 hours, but as it turned out, very, very pleased with it.
And I remember the drive back that evening from the studio, we were all so kind of pleased with the end result that we went straight down the William IV and we demanded that they put the tape on their in-house cassette player, and we sat there with our pints of lager listening to what we'd made that day, and we just sat there, looked at each other and went, this is the start of something really special.
So yeah, and after that we put it about to people and had some good write-ups, and it went down really well.
And it got a momentum. It got going. We ended up travelling further and further afield.
We geeked and we geeked.
We'd play up and down the country. We'd play in different venues. We'd get home at 4 in the morning, living on a diet of kebabs and beer, and yeah.
Paris was really kind of moving along at a very swift pace. We found ourselves going up to doing photo shoots in London for promo stuff to get gigs. We took on a manager, a guy called Dave Patterson. He was a local guy who actually managed Jason's band that he was in for a while, Excess.
And he had some good contacts in the end. But I think in his early days of management, that was a bit, he made promises he couldn't keep, and realised after I picked him up and put him against the wall that he wasn't going to make that mistake again. So a year had passed or so since we'd spoken, so I suppose it was good to bury the hatchet. And
things were moving on at a very swift pace. Dave was getting us gigs around the country.
I think that the turning point for Paris was really when we got the Marquee gig.
We actually did a gig at the Marquee supporting this other band called Tilt.
Now the Marquee in Wardour Street, in the old venue, before it moved to Leicester Square, was the place to play. And when we got there, we were just in awe of the place, just something else. And a big roar up, because we had 2 coaches there, and they're as fueled up as we are, because they've been part of this journey. When you have like close friends that are behind you all the way for that many years, you sort of then go, they're feeling it for you, they're feeling all the adrenaline that, it's kind of like nervous parents seeing their kids on stage. It's sort of, for them it was the same for us. And I just remembered, just belting it out. And it was, you couldn't see, well, you could see the back of the room, it was that tiny and smoky, and it was a hole really, but it was the place to play. I mean, everyone played there, from the Sex Pistols to the Stones, that really that whole circuit. Everyone sort of finished up at the Marquee. In those days it was like the Hammersmith Odeon. They do a tour and finish up at Hammersmith Odeon, but prior to that really the Marquee was the place to play. After that, we just gigged solidly, and I loved it. I mean, what I loved the most, it wasn't just the gigging; it was the rehearsal, the whole, dare I say, camaraderie of getting together and having a crack with your mates. Because at that time, the sort of new wave of heavy metal, it was changing. It was going into sort of like big hair, bare chest metal, pouting, giving it all that. And most of the musos that you met, you didn't like. They were just not very nice people. And I suppose that I was so lucky that I had this group of guys that I've been working with that were like my best friends. So, and they had a lot more going for them than any other sort of musos that were sort of saying, come and sing with us, come and do a bit with this. And you think, well, actually, mate, I don't like you. But it's, and it was really difficult. But with my group of guys, we were like family. So we were like a family, close-knit. So we could go out on the lash and we could probably not speak about music for about 5 hours, messed around, and then just say, oh, yeah, you still up for rehearsal on Tuesday? Yeah.
Chris's hair was getting very, very long, and actually at that point he looked like Bon Jovi, and I think even a number of times we were walking around Windsor, he'd get stopped by people going, are you John Bon Jovi? And I think we kind of actually sort of blagged that he probably was.
So I got to the stage, we thought, well, we need to do a single and release it. We had our EP thing, but we thought, let's do a single. Because the ultimate goal was to get that record deal, to get, so we could... We did this Paris thing full time. We still had jobs, shitty jobs. And the record deal was, the means to the end, wasn't it? It would have ensured that we don't have to do these shitty jobs for a living. We could give them up and do what we love full time. And we did, to a certain extent, live, breathe the band Paris. We were totally focused, but totally skint. so we had to have little jobs here and there, to keep us going, keep us in kebabs.
Off the back of that, the EP, now's the time, we've got to get into the studio and do something a bit more pro, and record a single. Not many bands were doing it because it was expensive, but yeah, we all clubbed together and we went to the Village Studios in Dagenham.
And the recording studio in Dagenham was a proper, full-on, 24-track studio, big live room, vocal booths, guitar room, control room, and it was like, you turn up there and for me it was like, this is it, this is what I should be doing.
And started working with Ian Richardson, an engineer who suited me because of his sense of humour really, and his character. Suited the whole band because the relaxed atmosphere to it, we managed to get so much more out of the whole session because you were relaxed from the get-go. So you're having the crack, and then suddenly it's like being in your own living room with your mates. And so once again, things tend to flow.
And I remember we went up to Dagenham that day, and we went in the studio, and we had 2 tracks we'd written. One was called You Are the One.
You Are the One.
You Are the One.
And the other was called Not Feeling the Rain.
B-side was a bit of a ballad called Not Feeling the Rain.
And it was a crowd favourite, so you know it's pretty good. But when you start recording it and go, wow, that guitar lick, when that comes in, that puts the hairs up on the back of your neck straight away. And you kind of know straight away with that track what you're going to get as soon as it starts. And then I launch into it with probably the best recorded vocal that I've ever done.
And again, Simon in his element. You can have, Chris, you can have 2 tracks, I'm going to have all the other 22. That was kind of how I approached it. I'm having all the tracks for my guitars and you're not having anything else.
I was probably peaking at that time, I think, for my voice. I think my voice tended to change after that because we were working so hard, and you do sort of, when you sort of get into your 20s, start losing that top range when you've been extensively gigging. Your voice does change and you become very aware of it.
It was great fun. We laid off the 2 tracks, and then the first night of the recording, we went back to the B&B, got absolutely shit-faced. And I don't even quite remember how we even got to bed, because we were basically, it was one of those little B&Bs where it's like an honesty bar. Right, honesty bar with a rock band doesn't really wash, does it? You know, go in, help yourself, drink as much as you want. You're supposed to leave some money, and I don't even think we even paid for it. I think we just drank everything. So consequently, next morning, back at the studio at like 9:30, all of us were just white as a sheet. I think I might have been vomiting on my body all night. Jason was hungover to hell. Andy was, all his black scraggly hair was all pulled off like he'd been pulled through a bush sideways. We went back in, and luckily we'd laid off all the tracks. Jason went in, did his vocals, and we mixed it all that afternoon.
And recording the B-side second was the best thing because I'd relaxed so much. And when you're doing, it's all right to go out and belt it out, but you try and do a ballad cold, you don't get the texture right straight away, then your first line is everything. And I remember doing that first line about 3 or 4 times and just saying, is that right, is that right? And then we do the whole rest of the song. I said, I'm warmed up enough now, I want to go back and do my first line again. Because you never get a second chance, do you, that first line if it's not spot on.
And I remember going out to the toilet in the afternoon when we were mixing, and somebody was walking around outside the studio. And I don't know if they were to do the studio or they were part of the complex it was in, but I remember someone saying, that guy's voice sounds amazing. That piece that's playing sounds amazing. I think it was Not Feeling the Rain was blaring out, and we were just mixing it at that point and adding all the backing vocals in.
And we went out and we promoted that to hell, and we did some good shows, and we just had a ball, you know. Loved it, absolutely loved it.
And I remember, this is another milestone for me, hearing our single on the radio actually being played physically on the radio space. And I was kind of just completely in awe of it.
When it's played on the radio and you hear it for the first time and you hear Tommy Vance talking about what you've done, you know what I mean? And it's like, this is Tommy Vance. He's talking about us. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's that was brilliant. It was a Friday rock show for us. It was just everything.
Falling over my mistake.
But there you go. That the single was a real milestone for us, I think. You know, and it sort of set us on the path.
And actually, what was also nice about that particular single was that it was cut at the Townhouse, which is where Chris's band Beats Working used to cut a lot of their stuff. A guy called Gordon Vickery, very well known guy in the industry, he actually mastered it for us.
We kind of felt, I think, that we were no longer in the lower league. We could rub shoulders with the same guys who were putting out albums independently or on Music for Nations or something like that. You know, we felt we were only a breath away from them. And when you were hanging out with those guys, you know, we were up at the Royal Standard. I mean, guys have got record deals, you know, hanging out with the likes of Paul Di'Anno and Jez Cox from Tigers of Pantang and stuff like that. And they know you by name because you're playing the same circuits. You may not, you know, have their notoriety, but on a friend basis, you're no different to them.
Time goes on a little bit. Beats Working, I mean, I never stopped playing for Beats Working, it's just that they were quiet. Paris was the main concentration. I'd go and do the odd gig with Beats Working, but always go back to Paris. Got to a stage where, you know, Paris changed their name to Cheyenne, wanted to do something a bit harder. Beats Working started to get a bit more busy and they wanted to do a new album. So I started doing a bit of that, and Paris kind of went, or Cheyenne as it was, kind of went like that a little bit, you know, until we just kind of parted company.
And then a few things kind of, you know, materialised in the band, and then sadly Chris left, and I think because Beats Working at that point was kind of regurgitating, and John, the leader of Beats Working, really was keen for Chris to come back and play.
They got a new drummer, I got busy with Beats Working and doing the new album, and they carried on as Cheyenne and I carried on with my thing. It's not like we ever fell out, we always, you know, remained good friends. It's just that we just went like that a little bit.
With the new drummer, after Chris's departure back to Beats Working, we toured and we did a lot more gigs.
Nigel sadly moved on after a period of time, and we found ourselves without a bass player, and we found another bass player, a guy called Jim Houghton, who at the time was playing in a band from West Sussex. And Jim is an incredible advocate for the word musician. He is just the pinnacle of being what a musician is all about. Total dedication to his art. You know, he plays in numerous bands at the same time. He's switching from different styles, primarily around the rock side, but he's very happy to slip into whatever bracket. And I think he brought something different to the table as well. He was very much into hard rock, down and dirty hard rock, you know, and also, you know, Def Leppard and Whitesnake. So he fitted in really well after Nigel departed. It was another great period of my musical background. It allowed me to express myself a bit more. I got a little bit more opportunity to do those more widdly solos that everyone else was doing at the time. Allowed us to drink more beer.